Welcome everyone to the first of this series of classes, God willing, a weekly series. I call this class the Living Torah, and the reason for that is that I think, especially in the world we're living in right now, we need the guidance from the Torah. The Torah was given to the Jewish people thousands of years ago, but it has so much richness. And it was given to us as our eternal Torah, something which forever can be a guidebook, not just in the mitzvah. So every seventh day, observe Shabbat, kosher. Yes, so it gives us the rules of Judaism, but much more than that. It gives us the soul of Jewish life, which is part of the way we observe the mitzvah, but also part of every single area of our life. And Torah speaks to us as human beings, to be better people, better leaders, to develop our own emotional sense, our spiritual sense, to guide us, to be a moral guide to the world, right? We have in this wonderful Torah layers and layers of meaning that give us internally and also for us to project externally so much that we can give, and it's alive. It's really alive. And that's the living Parsha that each week there's a tradition from the first leader of Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi, who lived over 200 years ago. And he wants to share with his students, you have to live with the weekly Torah portion. And it's not just, it happens to be this week we're reading this portion, this Parsha. This whole week, this is the character, this is the sort of the mission statement of our week. Whenever we're reading in the Torah, that becomes what I'm engaged in, what I'm thinking about, what I'm living through, what I'm trying to grow with. And what's really interesting is the Torah reading is divided into, do you know how many portions divided into?
52? No, 50.
53, right? So it's almost the amount of weeks in a year, right? Sometimes we do 2 portions in a week. And then each parsha is divided also into aliyot. When we go to the shul and read the Torah, there are 7 people called to the Torah each week. It's divided into 7 portions, which mirrors the 7 days of the week. And so what I do, and many others, is each day of the week study that parsha of the Torah. So this week's Parsha Lecha, each day I'm reading that portion. The first reading on Sunday, the second reading on Monday. And I go through the whole parsha each week. That's my parsha study for the week, divided into 7 readings of the week. This year, there's an incredible initiative from a number of philanthropists and with UGA involved as well, and Chabad in Florida, and Dan Loeb, and they're basically pushing what they call the Simchas Torah Challenge. In the aftermath of October 7th, where on Simchat Torah, the day the Jews were celebrating Al Torah, obviously we know the tragedy that happened. So how can we bring to life, or not just remember the tragedy, but also live with the people that we lost through engaging ourselves deeper in the Torah? And the challenge, what they call like the most inclusive book club, is to get Jews to sign up to read every week the Torah portion. Read it at your own leisure. You have a chumash, you read it, you can do one thing a day if that works for you. Do it in whatever, one day a week, do the whole thing, and read the parsha each week. So far, over 14,000 people that have signed up for this challenge to read each week. And this class we're doing here is actually partially a grant from the UGA towards this as well. So I would encourage everyone to go on afterwards. I'll send the link out to the Simchat Torah Challenge. You can just Google it. And you put your email in, sign up if you're up for it. Each week you get an email with the parsha, some insights, the text from Safari to read. It's a great challenge for yourself, and something which you're joining so many other Jews as well, so it gives a lot of the Jewish people together connecting through our own Torah, our own heritage. And so links us with the Jews across the country and across the world. We won't go through the whole parsha here on Tuesday nights, but what I would like to do is give a little overview of the parsha, and then focus on 1 or 2 points that can go into a little bit more and look at the lessons they teach us in our life. But what I plan to do, God willing, is those that are committing to come to this class. Obviously, no not every week, but to be a part of it, we'll get a chumash. So you have your own chumash you can use then on a daily basis to read the parsha, weekly basis, whatever it is, and bring it, and we'll use that as a text to look through at the class together. We'll all be on the same page, literally. Yeah, that's the challenge we set out for today. Okay. Everyone on board? Okay. So this week of Parsha is the third week of the year, because we had Simchat Torah. We started right away the Shabbat Bereshit. Then last week was Noach. This week Parsha Lech Lecha, and we're introduced to the first Jew. Do you know who the first Jew was? Abraham, exactly. Interestingly, Judaism wasn't even invented yet, right? The Jews got the Torah way later at Sinai, hundreds of years later, but Abraham is already considered the first Jew. Because God chose him, your descendants will be the Jewish people, I'm choosing you. And so that choice was made already. He became the first Jew, and later on, the formal Jewish nation formed after they left Egypt. Abraham is the greatest influencer, right? You know how many followers he has?
3/4 of the planet.
Exactly, billions of people. Because not only the Jews, which is we're a tiny percentage, right? We're 18 million, but Christians, Muslims, all trace back their moral and their Torah, their heritage, to Abraham. He was the guiding light, and so he has had the most influence on the world and continues to be the most influential figure in history. Abraham. The path, the trend he set is guides today, as it has throughout history, most of the world, which is incredible. And not just, in some abstract way. Ask an average Jew, Muslim, Christian on the street, who is, what's your guide? Your religion comes from Abraham, right? And so he shifted the course of history in a way that no one else has. And that's what we read about the beginning, the origin story of Abraham in this week's Torah week. So knowing where we come from helps us understand also where we're going. What does it mean to be a Jew? We're the people of Abraham. What does that mean? So let's think for a moment, why did God choose Abraham? God appears to him, right? God says, Abraham, and we're going to read in a moment. Why him? Why not anyone else in the world? In fact, even before him, there was Noah. Noah was a good guy. God chose him to be saved from the flood. But God didn't say, you're the guy. Didn't say, you're going to be my people. Abraham was chosen for that. Why? Any ideas?
I'm trying to go back to Hebrew school.
Okay. We're gonna hold it against you.
Yeah, and I feel like Noah was the best of his time, but just in that moment, that's why he was chosen. Not the best of all time. And Abraham was, I want to say he was humble, right? With the tents, and he invited everybody in. There was a humility to him. And I could be wrong on that. That could be most.
No, you're not wrong.
All right.
You're right. Abraham was definitely humble. He invited guests. We know he had an open tent, literally. He had 4 doors on his tent. No matter what way a person was coming from, they'd see an open door to come in. He invited him in, gave him a meal. So he was very hospitable. And we said Noah is absolutely correct. Last week we read, it says Noah was a great man, a tzaddik, b'dorotav, in his generation.
Right.
So there's different ways to read it. One way to read it is, in his generation, it was great, but the bar wasn't very high.
Right.
But still, it doesn't tell us about Abraham much. And the truth is, if you open a chumash, you open the Torah, you will not find any good reason. Not only that, you'll find something very strange. Any other Jewish figure, Jewish hero, where we have in the Torah, Moses, the prophets, before we hear their story, we get an introduction. Who they were, why they were so great, and then God, speaks to them or guides them to do something in the world. This week we open the Parsha, and we have the opening statement, God told Abraham ABC. Who's Abraham? Why? No history. And we read he was 75 years old. So we have no biography for Abraham in the first 75 years of his life. Today, 75, you're retiring, right? You're finished your life mission. You're over. The Abraham we know, he began his career at 75. What was he doing till then? He must have done something to be worthy of being chosen for this position in history. And the Midrash, which is a text of the rabbis, which looks for hints in the Torah for different, sometimes stories or ideas that aren't written in the text but between the lines, tells us so many stories of Abraham, of his heroics in his youth. How, as a young child already, he discovered God, looked at the world and tried to explore how the world works and who's running this place. There must be a God in the world. And how his father was a pagan idol worshiper and sold idols, and Abraham smashed the idols. He went against everyone in his times to promote his belief in God, to promote the morality that comes from that. And so we read a lot of that, but none of it's in the text. And I want to start off that question tonight. Why wouldn't Torah tell us any of this? Why aren't we first introduced to Abraham the person before we have Abraham the first Jew? That's the opening question. We'll get back to it. So think about it a little bit. If you have something to say, a suggestion, please chime in. There's no right or wrong answers here. Everything goes. Building on that, in the commentaries, there's three main understandings. What was so great about Abraham? Three ideas. One, that he wasn't afraid to be different. He was called Avraham HaIvri. The word today for Hebrew. Do you know how to say Hebrew in Hebrew? Ivrit. What does Ivrit mean? So originally Jews were called Ivrim, Hebrews, right? Ivri comes from the word Ever, Me'ever Layam, from across the river. Abraham was on the other side of history. He was swimming against the tide. Everyone was doing one thing, and he wasn't afraid to say, I'm doing something different. He was someone different, an outcast of society, but he believed in his cause. He said, I don't care what flags they're hanging in their windows, I'm going to stand up for my truth. And even if it was going to cost him, he was persecuted for it, he was almost killed for it, but this is my truth, and this I believe in, my moral values, I'm going to stand by them no matter what. So that quality of his, the Hebrew, that is one idea, why he was so worthy of being chosen by God. The other, I mentioned before, is his philosophical inquiry. That Abraham, since age 3, already began asking questions and realized, understood there must be a creator. There must be one force that brought everything into being. Now, that doesn't sound so radical today. But, well, even today it's pretty radical, right? But in those days, no one believed in that. They believed in multiple gods, which means everything that exists has its own force of God, its own force bringing it into being. And there's competing forces, and there's so many different mythologies where the pagan mythologies, they have all these ideas of how the competing gods and the loving relationships brought different things into being, and there was this chaos in the world. And the idea that everything comes from one creator, which means, really, that all of the world and all of history is part of one story, one meaningful story, going towards a certain trajectory, on a certain path, making the world better, that was revolutionary. And Abraham, on his own, realized that, and that was what made him incredibly worthy. There's a midrash that I want to read together, the second source here. We'll read the first source. This is the beginning of the Parsha this week. God said to Abraham, go forth from your native land, from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. So God, the first thing we read about Abraham is God telling him at age 75, I want you to leave everything you know. Leave your home, leave your birthplace, leave your culture, go. Where is he going? God didn't tell him. It ended up being Israel. And at 3 different points in this week's Torah reading, God promises Abraham, this land of Israel will be yours and your descendants. And so this is a text from 3,000, even more years ago, a recognized text in the Torah, where God promised Abraham, this is going to be your land. Right? And so, our deed, there's a wonderful story of, I think, Ben Gurion. And Ben Gurion was, before the state was founded, and they had this commission And the Jews were arguing their case to have a state of Israel, and the Arabs were arguing their case. And the judge, I forgot his name, he said to, where are you from? And all the Jews were from Europe, and the Arabs, they're all there. So he says, you have no title to this land. Like, why? You're coming here, colonizers, right? We want to be colonizers. And so Ben Gurion pulled out a Tanakh, the Bible. Says, here's our deed. 1,000 years ago, we have a title to the land. And it's a recognized title, right? So we have this promise, God to Abraham, going to Israel is going to be yours. But originally, he didn't tell him where he's going. I want you to travel. Go, and I'll show you where. And Abraham went forth as God had commanded him, and Lot, his nephew, went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran, where he was with his family. And so Abraham travels to this unknown place. The Midrash says something very interesting. It gives us a metaphor. The bold is just the verse again. Rabbi Yitzchak said, this is analogous to one who was passing from place to place and saw a building alight. He said, is it possible this building has no one in charge of it? The owner of the building looked out at him and said, I am the owner of the building. So because Abraham, our patriarch, was saying, is it possible this world is without someone in charge? The Holy One, blessed be He, looked at him and said, I am the owner of the world. So the Midrash is addressing, why did God suddenly introduce Himself to Abraham? Because Abraham was asking the questions. Abraham was seeking God, and God said, okay, I'm here. No one until that point was asking that question. What was the question Abraham was asking? So there's two ways to read this Midrash. One way is, Abraham saw a building that was filled with light. He says, oh, someone lives here. It's inhabited. It's not an abandoned home. The lights are on. Which means he's looking at the world, and he saw that everything's running so smoothly and perfectly. Nature is so precise. The world must have some kind of orchestrator, someone, a creator who brought it all together. And so he saw the lights on. He said, there must be a creator. And God says, yes, you found me. Indeed, I am the creator. That's one reading. It's another way to read this Midrash. The word in Hebrew for a light, the building was a light, is the word dolek, which means more than just lit up, it's in flames. And this reading says Abraham saw a beautiful palace, a beautiful building on fire. And he said, there must be someone here. Why are they putting the fire out? And God said, I am here. Go forth. Meaning, Abraham saw a beautiful world, a world that's perfectly orchestrated, this palace, but the palace is on fire. It's filled with corruption. It's filled with hate, filled with war. It's filled with so many people doing terrible things, destroying the world. And he asked that question, where's God? How could this exist? How could so much terrible things be going on in the world? How is this just?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So he's faced with this crisis of faith. I see a world, I see that there must be something here, but how can there be so much evil in the world? And God asks him, I am God, but I have a mission for you. In other words, God flipped it. He says, of course there's a world, there's so much terrible inside of it. There's evil, there's corruption. That's your job. That's your mission. And so because you uncovered the problem, Abraham, because you noticed, you have a job here to put out that fire. And that became the Jewish story. To put out that fire. To look at the world and say, how can we heal this world? How can we bring more goodness to the world? How can we bring a moral clarity, a spiritual clarity? How can we bring God to be in the world, the palace to be restored? That is the Jewish mission. That became Abraham's calling, and us, his children, our calling. And so this very first introduction to Abraham becomes the underlying spirit of what it means to be a Jew. To try and make this world a better place. To try and put out that fire. To see the palace in all its beauty. Any questions here? So, this is what it means. How do we do it? How do we go about and doing this mission? So, God told Abraham, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. I want you to go out of your land. Why didn't God tell Abraham where he's going? Say, I have a mission for you. Go to Israel. So, one reading is that God was testing Abraham. How faithful are you going to be to me? If I send you on a blind mission without a destination, are you going to go? If I tell you, can you meet me in this place? All right, no problem. If I say, I want you to just drive, and I'll eventually tell you where you're going. I don't know. I'm leaving everything behind. My family, my culture I'm comfortable with, the city I'm living in, my job. I'm telling you, leave it all behind, let go, without any real destination in mind. It was a test of Abraham's faith, and Abraham passed this test with flying colors. We read, Abraham went, no problem, I'm going. But there's also another layer of meaning here. Perhaps it wasn't so important where he was going, but the fact that he was going. God told Abraham, Lech Lecha. If you want to succeed in this mission, if you want to have an impact in the world, the first thing you have to do is leave your own comforts. It's not about you. It's not about what's in it for me. Let go of that. Let go of self. Let go of your own needs. And if we think about it, the three descriptions use him: leave me'artzecha, from your land, moladtecha, your birthplace, and from the house of your father. And you think about it, it could be sort of three primary ways of identifying ourselves. Our environment, artzecha, a land where we feel comfortable, moladtecha, our birthplace, kind of where we come from, and Beit Avicha, our family. We grew up, the education we got, the experience that we had at home, and they define us. And we almost feel ourselves victims to our environment. This is who I am. This is me. This is my nature, right? I was born this way. This is the environment I am in, or I was in. And this is the household, the education I got. And they define me. Those become how I look at myself, how the world looks at me. And God told him, if you want to succeed in this mission, Lech Lecha, leave all those three things behind. Don't define yourself from where you came from. Don't define yourself by, I'm this kind of person. This I'm good at. That's all your own self-limitations, your ego, your own, what your needs are. Lech Lecha, leave that behind. Where? Once you leave it behind, you'll find your calling. You'll find where you're going. I'll direct you there. But the first thing you have to do is allow yourself to be open to that. If you want to change the world, you cannot be stuck being yourself. So that's the first thing God told Abraham. You have a mission. You found a world that's on fire. You see a world that's filled with evil, with hate, with prejudice, with corruption. Leave your own comfort space and make yourself available to fix that world. And Abraham goes. He goes, travels with his wife, Sarah, and his nephew, and they travel to Israel. They get to Israel, and finally God said, this is where I want you to be. There's a famine, a drought, and they cannot live there. They have to leave Israel, go down to Egypt. They face challenges in Egypt, and eventually make it back to Israel. And all this time, Abraham is following God. He's already, an older man, in his 70s and 80s, and God then says, you know what, Abraham, ready now, I will make you into a great person. Then Abraham turns to God and says, I have no children. You make me into a great nation. Out of who? Out of what? What do I need all this for if I have no continuation to what I'm building here? And God promises him a child. And Sarah is 90 years old. Abraham is 99 years old when they have Yitzchak is born. And we read that in next week's Parsha. But right before that, God says, Abraham, I want you to have a circumcision, a brit. The word brit, which we usually translate today as circumcision, actually means a covenant, a deal, right? God was making a covenant with Abraham, a deal with Abraham. And if we look at the story, the Parsha, and you don't have the whole text here, but I've selected a few texts here. There's actually, in this week's Parsha, twice where God makes a covenant with Abraham, 2 different covenants. And the significance of them really sets up the whole entire Jewish project. What we're doing as Jews, and we'll go back to answer our original question, why we get no bio, no resume, why Abraham was selected for this job. So what happens to these covenants? God promised him 2 things in the covenant: children and the land. Those are the 2 big things God promises in his end. Any good deal, though, there's a buyer and a seller, right? This is a 2-way deal. What is Abraham giving, right? What's he giving to God? So in the second covenant, he's circumcising himself. God said, I want you to circumcise yourself. You're going to give yourself over to me, commit yourself, and literally make a mark in your flesh that you are part of now my people. And I will keep my end of the deal and give you these 2 gifts. You'll have a child, and you will promise the land of Israel. Which is interesting, that they're always interrelated. When God promises him Israel, he also promises your descendants will be as many as the sand of the shore, the dust of the earth, and the stars in the sky. Because a land without a people is missing, and a people without a land is missing. And so Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael are interconnected. We kind of one without the other. And so they both have to go together. And that was the covenant God was making with him. The 2 covenants are different in this very central respect. The first time God made a deal with Abraham, there were no strings attached. God didn't ask for anything in return. God said, I am making a covenant with you, I will give you these things. The second time, he said, I want you to have a circumcision. And you and your male offspring after that will circumcise themselves as young children. What's the significance of a covenant, a brit? It's much more than a business deal. When we shake hands in a business deal, right? 2 people make a deal. What's in it for each of them? Are they out there for their own sake or for the other person's sake? For their own. When I decide that I'm going to buy your merchandise and pay you $100,000, to me, the merchandise right now is worth more, is more valuable than $100,000, which is why I'm giving you the money and want the product. And for you, the $100,000 is worth more to you right now than the merchandise. Therefore, you're going to give me the merchandise and get $100,000. So there's a mutual agreement that it's beneficial for both of us. As soon as it stops being beneficial, the deal's off. Right? I don't need to enter this agreement anymore. I'm losing out over here. I'm done. 1 second, I still want to go ahead. I don't care about you. I actually never cared about you. I cared about myself. And it was convenient for me right now to do business with you. And as long as it's convenient for me, I'm making a profit, I'll continue this. So it's all about our own needs. And I'm only agreeing to this deal as much as it works for me. Of course, we want to be honest. And so if I agree to something, even if I now realize I'm in too deep or it's not anymore worthwhile for me, I should follow through. As long as I have to in the contract. But as soon as I can stop this, I will. Because it was all about me in the first place. A brit, a covenant, is something else. It's a commitment to each other, not because it works for me, but because of you. Like a marriage. What's marriage? You can live with someone and build a life together as long as it works for you. And then as soon as it stops working for you, walk away. The idea, the institution of marriage means I'm committing to you beyond that right now works for me. Right? And it's the idea of a chuppah is, in Jewish tradition, is because we're both entering something bigger than ourselves. Right? We're under the chuppah together. Which means it's not about my needs or your needs. We're both committing to something greater than each other. Because if I'm not in the mood today, I can't just walk away. I made a commitment. A commitment not just to you, not just to myself, but to something larger than both of us. And that's a covenant. Where no matter what, I'm committed to you. Even when it stops working for me. It was never about me in the first place. So when God tells Abraham, I want to make a covenant with you. This is already sort of the next stage in God's giving Abraham a mission. First, yes, go travel and doing small things. Now God says, I'm making a covenant. We're making this forever. Not because I gain, not because you gain, but because it's something the world gains. We're in it beyond whatever practical gain there is right now. And this is a definition of the Hebrew word brit, of covenant. So God tells Abraham, I'm committing to you no matter what. To be a Jew is not defined by how you behave, by your actions. You could not live a Jewish life. You could not even know you're Jewish or identify with that, but you are a Jew by virtue of being born into that. So it's not about earning it. It's not about, well, God's responding, if you do good things, you get that Jewish status. Once you make a covenant with Abraham, that's it. You're in. And all of Abraham's descendants are now going to be the Jewish people. Because it's a deal. It's a covenant. Like a child. Your child, let's say, misbehaves or isn't living up to what you want, that's still your kid, right? It's irrelevant. It's a DNA. It's part of who they are and who you are. You can never escape that. You never want to escape that. And so, this gives definition to Abraham goes from being sort of a good officer of God, doing what God wants, to now became part of his DNA, part of his very being. Not because I'm only doing good in the world, he's become the embodiment of goodness in the world, which is passed in the genetics, literally, to his children and to his descendants after that. That gives us an understanding what a Jew is. And then the question I can ask is, okay, great, so let me do whatever I want. If God's going to give me that status, in this case the land of Israel, whatever he promises the Jewish people, no matter what they do, then let me do whatever I want. Right? I have it. But the truth is the opposite. And take again the parent-child relationship. If I only love my kid because they're making me proud and they're making me happy, then they may want to earn that love and do good. But then at a certain point where they don't need your love or whatever, they feel no need to impress you, right? And therefore they will stop doing that because they don't need that response. But if you show absolute love, because you're my kid, no matter what, and I love you no matter who you are, what you do, I'm going to still show you that love. Now, the child say, oh, my parent loves me anyway, I can do whatever I want. It actually is the opposite effect. The child says, my parent loves me, and therefore I should live up to this. Not because I'm being forced. I don't feel, I need to earn that love. That can feel it more, feel it less. But because I feel that total unrestricted love, I feel a sense of duty, of responsibility to live up to it. And that same thing, God told Abraham, this is the covenant I'm making with you, and therefore, as Jews, that's not to give us a license to do what we want. The opposite, it makes us now want to live up to that covenant, want to live up to the vision God has for us, and the mission God has for us in this world. And then God told Abraham, I want to make covenant of the circumcision, right? Abraham was 99 years old when he had a circumcision. Ishmael, who was his other son from Hagar, was 13 years old at the time. He was circumcised then. His son who was born from Sarah, Yitzchak, Isaac, was 8 days old when he received circumcision. He was the first to be circumcised at 8 years old, and since then, it's a Jewish practice to have a Brit at 8 years old. Now, what's greater? What do you think is a greater devotion or show of commitment? Having a bris at 8 days old, like Isaac, or at 13 years old, like Ishmael? 13? Right? It seems to be. The baby at 8 years old has no idea what's going on, right? There's no expression here of commitment. The parent's commitment, but the kid is totally unaware. At 13, to volunteer and agree to go through circumcision is an incredible commitment, right? It takes a lot of really wanting to do this. But yet, Torah instructs us to circumcise our children as babies. Why? Why not follow Yishmael's path that he did it when he was a young adult? So some might say, well, it's a sure way that people do it. If you leave it to 13, you have a lot of kids not getting circumcised, right? Probably. But there's something deeper to it as well. We just explained that a covenant is not about sort of a logical commitment. I'm doing this because it makes sense to me and something in it for me. It's commitment that goes beyond logic, beyond gain, personal gain. It's something transcendent that I'm diving into, right? Like faith itself. It's just, I'm in something beyond reason, and I'm committing to it. To symbolize that covenant, we circumcise a child before they're even aware. It's almost, you're born into this. Your connection with God is not because you decided, it's not because you made a commitment, I'm going to go ahead with this. It's because it's who you are. And so before you're even aware, before you even understand anything, we're already entering you into this covenant. Because it is your very DNA. It's your very being. And so the covenant of circumcision continues this idea that Abraham is being told by God, your relationship with me is not something which is rational. That Abraham, he started from rational, right? He understood there's a God, understood therefore he has a mission in this world. It started from his own realization of what's going on in the world. And God originally said, okay, now go ahead and do this mission. But then God said, it's not just about that. Something much greater here. You now have a relationship with me that's beyond the rational. That's beyond your understanding. And that's something really unique about Judaism and our role in the world. The world evolves, and society keeps changing, and what's normal in society and what's the moral compass of society keeps changing. And you would think, as human beings, we should sort of evolve with that, because that's how the progress of the world is. Yet, we're rooted in Torah, which remains the same. And obviously, so interpretation changes sometimes with the framework, but ultimately we're stuck, not in a negative sense, we're anchored in this timeless truth. What connects us to that? Because it's beyond rational. If we only do what makes sense, we'd never be able to maintain our relationship with Torah. What's kept Jews going for thousands of years, more than any other nation? Because we haven't tried to adapt and change ourselves and do what makes sense always. We have this irrational connection with our heritage and with God. That we do crazy things sometimes, but more than crazy, we're rooted in something so deeply that it can never be taken away from us. So Jewish faith is that no matter what, I'm here. Not because, Judaism is so meaningful and it gives me so much in my life and it adds so much to, which is true, right? But the reason I observe Shabbat is not because it's great family time. It is. But it's because this is my heritage. This is my relationship with God. The reason I do the mitzvot isn't just because they give routine meaning. It's because they are the meaning of the world, of my life. So our commitment to it from Abraham is something much deeper than just what makes sense. We're in it. And even when we find it difficult and challenging, I'm not in the mood today, I'm not feeling this, it's irrelevant. I'm in it. I have that covenant, that Brit. And the same is true the other way. God has almost a responsibility to us, no matter what. We're not living up to our ideal as Jews. We don't lose that status. It doesn't take away from us. Because no matter what, He's committed to us. And that's the commitment of the covenant. And now if we go back, this can explain to us why we don't get Abraham's background. Who was the Abraham meant to be looking up to? The Abraham in the beginning of his life where he discovered God and came to realizations, or the Abraham once God chooses him and picks him out for a mission? There's the Abraham who finds God, and then there's the Abraham that God finds. As Jews, so the Abraham of our faith, our forefather Abraham, is the Abraham that God chooses. Not because he was so brilliant, and he understood the world, and he arrived at conclusions of God, that rational inquiry, that philosophy, that understanding of the world is great. That's not what made Abraham the first Jew. That's not what being a Jew means. It's also part of it, but it's not the foundational, fundamental meaning of the Jew. It's the Abraham that God says, I'm choosing you. God speaks to him. That's the Abraham of our Jewish faith. That's what we're looking for to be a Jew. Not his early life, but once God says, I'm picking you. And so the very first introduction in Torah of Abraham is the first time God speaks to him. That's when Abraham became the Abraham, the Jewish forefather. Until then, he was a great person, incredible human being. But now he was something much greater than that. He became the first Jew. And so Noah, we look at as a great human being. And so we read his history, his accomplishments, he built the ark, and Noah we can look to and say he's an incredible human. And we can learn from him. But at the end of the day, he's not our father, our parent. We don't say Noah was the forefather. No. Abraham began Judaism. That's when our real core essential relationship with God began. And this is, I think, gives incredible insight into who we are as people and also our role in the world. As people, we have this relationship with God no matter what. Every Jew is part of this picture. Whether we're living up to that or not yet, we're still part of it. Which is why we can have Yom Kippur, where the whole year I was doing whatever I want, and today I'm reconnecting. Who are you to suddenly come? No. I always belong. No matter how distant a Jew is, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and the most distant Jew are equally Jewish. Have the same Jewish DNA, chosen by God. Equal access. At the same time, because of that, we have to think about what's our responsibility here. What's our mission in this world? Even when it's hard for us, even when it's not convenient for us, even when we don't feel fulfilled in doing it, we have a calling. Back from Abraham, we have this mission. And that mission is to leave our own comforts, to step away from the world as we see it naturally, and to say, how can I heal this world? That's it. Heal this world through bringing God into the world. So when God says to Abraham, you're heading to this place that I will show you. What he's telling you is, the place you're going to is a place where you see me. I will show you. You're going to find opportunities in the world to bring goodness and God into those places. And what develops later on in the Jewish story of the Jews getting the Torah at Sinai, that's sort of the framework God gives us. Here's how you actually fulfill His mission. All the mitzvot are bringing healing to the world, are making the world at peace with itself, with its real purpose. And that's what the whole Judaism is. It's a framework that we can, in our own lives, in the world around us, and in the broader world, make peace. Make peace means we bring the world aligned with its purpose. Bring our lives, every part of our lives, every moment of our day, every area of life we're engaged with. There's a way we can do it as a personal thing. I go to work. It can be because I want to make money, and I'm fighting for that last dime, or I'm finding opportunities there to bring goodness, to help people, to give charity from the money I make, to make a good impression on people, that I'm doing business morally and ethically. And all those shift our perspective of the world. Am I in it because this is good for me? Or am I acting like Abraham? I'm here on a mission, a purpose, to bring God into this world. And that is the beginnings of the Jewish story. It sets a tone for the entire rest of the story of the Torah. Any questions or comments there? No. Yeah.
No, so I'm just thinking it's a lot. It's just, I guess, it's the midrash built into it. If I were to just pick up the Torah, right, the original, whoever, I don't know when it was, like the first one. The Midrash is coming, what, 1,000 years later, or something like that. So we don't have that part.
Right.
Right, that there is, we just have, God said, go. And then, and I'm not trying to be like Quest, but, and then said, this is going to be your land, and we have a covenant. I guess I'm missing the connect, like without the Midrash, there's no, we're here to do good works and perfect the world and all that kind of stuff. It's just sort of, this is what God said he wanted to happen, and so this is what happened. And there doesn't seem to be a reason given to me without the Midrash.
Okay. Valid point.
Yeah.
So, two things. Number one is, you're right. And that is the value of the Midrash, which means we have the text of Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and then there's an incredible corpus of rabbinic literature that complements that. For a lot of it, you can't make sense of the text without the rabbinic edition, right? And they were both sort of given together. God gave Moses the written Torah with a oral, then it was oral, he's told over sort of commentary, was eventually written down. So part of the Midrash is that, sort of the accompanying tradition that was passed down together with the text, making sense of it. For example, the Torah says, rest on Shabbat. What does rest mean? Go to sleep? Reconnect?
So?
Right, but how do we do that?
This is
And
the
then-
conversation of mine.
Yeah, no, and well, the Torah says you should wear it on your arms and on your head. How do we get the tefillin, right? So all of this is the rabbinic compendium that goes together with it to give us explanation. So some of the rabbinic text is just an accompanying tradition that was always there with the written text. Some of it teases out of the text, close readings of text that go beyond the text right here. All the text together of the Tanakh, of the Torah, there are hints in different places of things that aren't in the text itself. I don't know where this, where the Midrash teases this out from. Definitely, it's looking at the fact that where's the backstory here? Why is God speaking to Abraham suddenly? But I think there is, if I remember correctly, I'll look in the actual Midrash. There is a text somewhere else where it sort of indicates the story of a palace. There is somewhere, it's born out of somewhere.
Okay.
So, the Torah itself is multi-layered. Even on a very, on a very sort of human level, it's a work of literature. Right? And you can read it on so many different ways, and they're all there within the original text. And the way we understand it is that sort of God wrote it vaguely on purpose, leaving room for multiple interpretations, because all of them have validity. And so there's a surface reading, there's a deeper reading, there's ways of reading a text, using different methodology that can tease out different meanings there, and they're all part of the original intent, almost, right? They're there in the story. Doesn't take away from this simple reading of the story, which has value as well as a simple storyline, right? And that's the first response I would say to you. The second response is, even as a simple story, it's a very powerful text as well, right? And I've only taken selections from it here. But if you read the Parsha, Abraham at 75 leaves everything behind. Leaves his family, leaves his comforts, leaves it all behind to go to Israel, to make what? We don't know yet. He doesn't know yet. And then as soon as he gets there, he's forced to leave, and then deal with the challenges of Egypt, go back to Israel, rebuild his life, and deal with the challenges of his children, of his family, navigate that. And then we'll read next week how he's asked by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. So just the storyline on its own is also incredibly powerful. You're right, it's missing some of the spirit of the text, but the body is still the body, a wholesome body of text. But that is the value of the Midrash. It's giving underlying meaning to the story that we wouldn't otherwise have. So it's filling in those gaps, context to the text, which makes it more relevant, perhaps, for us trying to look at it in 2024. Abraham lived thousands of years ago, great story, obviously beginnings of Judaism. But what does it mean to us? Looking at the subtext, the context, helps us then see how it's meant to be also a lesson. The word Torah actually means lesson. Torah means hora'ah. And so it's meant to be read as not just a history book, but as a my story book. As how can I live with this in my life? What lessons can I glean from here in being a better person, in being a better Jew, in being in my own life guiding me? And so we're meant to be looking at the Torah text as a simple reading, but also trying to tease out underlying meanings and ideas and morals and guidance that can propel our own journeys forward.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think I don't want to say it's a simple text, because I think next week's Parsha, if that's the one with the binding of Isaac, that's the father. That's a very difficult one from when you were a kid and you read that to if you read that now, I don't know how I would respond. And I know there was always lots of, my grandfather told me lots of reasons why this or that, but I think ultimately there's this aspect of a matter of faith. And I don't think faith is like so simple. And so if I did not have the midrash in this call to do something higher, that's giving Abraham a reason, right, to do this versus, well, this is, you heard the still small voice with that. And so you got to do it. You were called and go, and maybe that is why he is Abraham. He is the father of all this, because he went.
You're saying in a certain sense that the simple reading adds a deeper element of faith.
To me it does.
Right.
It is faith. There's no reason, right? Like, there is no transaction. If you do these good works, you'll get this, and you'll have, it's just, this is faith. This is the definition of it. You were called and you went. And
see, even the very notion that Abraham felt he was changing the world already detracts from the simple faith.
yeah.
Right? It's not about changing the world even. It's God says to go, and you're going to go because God said, not because this is your way of helping.
Right.
Yeah. That's good. Like that. Anyone else? No? All right. So this is our challenge, right? I want to first say, incredible that we came out here tonight. I know a few people that signed up for the class told me tonight is election night. They're not coming tonight. I said, you already voted or whatever, and now you no, we got to wait. Fine. But we're here tonight. I think that we're doing something much more valuable for ourselves and for the world, studying Torah here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So, kol hakavod, we're here. It's a good beginning. And God willing, we'll continue this every week on Tuesday. And hopefully grow into something very beautiful for ourselves and for the community. And the living Parsha isn't just learning the lessons in theory, but trying then to live in our lives. And so this is sort of the challenge throughout the week. What is to live with Abraham this week? How is that story of Abraham, in whatever way it talks to you most, something that I can live with this week? Make me maybe commit to something with more faith. Maybe help me have a different perspective on my life, on my engagement with other people, in whatever I'm doing. Have a deeper faith in God. So that's the challenge of this week, to live with Abraham. To live with our forefather, to bring him with us, and to be the Abrahams of the world. That's our mission, our job, our challenge.
It's
a little challenge. Yeah, keeping it small.
Yeah, you like it.